Hey everyone, we're back with the third video for March with the beautiful Kitaholic Kits. And this one, I'm going to get my mixed media messy on again. Surprise, surprise! Hopefully you enjoy the way I use the mixed media kits in amongst all the rest of the goodness. And it inspires you to get creative. First I pulled out the cut apart sheets because I wondered if I wanted to use a couple in like a grid style and have some embellishments laid behind them, each section and whatnot. And I pulled out these two. I just thought they were cute. Doesn't really go with the photo so much, but instead I end up changing it entirely, especially if you've seen the photo of the finished layout. You can tell that it is much more different to what I originally have got going on here. Now I pulled out this one. I'm going to cut this one. I thought it was one that I was less likely to use, so I'm going to use the backing of it. I just like the colours, and I pulled away that pink one and I'll use that somewhere else. I just really love that sentiment and the flowers and just the pink and yellow that's going on the striped pattern paper on the background. Just was really nice. And I love this Love Yourself, but it's just not going to work. It doesn't look that bad like that actually, but instead I'm going to go pull it all away and work out how I can use the background stripe. Like I was saying in my unboxing video, often the backing of a cut apart sheet is really lovely, and it's then therefore hard to decide which side to use. And often when I want to cut apart, I'll buy two so that I can have the background page as layering or normal pattern paper, and then the other side as the cut apart. So I'm pulling out 3 little blobs of texture paste, because what I'm going to do is use the Distress Oxides, which just sprayed everywhere. So I squeezed it too much in my excitement. It's going to make a darker pink, so I sprayed, I didn't mean to spray, but I squeezed out a lot of the colour. And then the bottom one I'm going to do with the yellowy orangey colour. And then I hadn't decided yet what I was going to make in the middle, but I did have to wipe that up so that I didn't get any of that pink in the other colours. So it mixes so nicely with the texture paste. It doesn't need much, but even though it waters it down a little, it's still got a lot of texture and chunk to it, so you could easily put it through a stencil or whatever. So just add one little drop of the pink, and I'm going to make a light pink. That way those colours are going to work so nicely with the stripes, and I'm going to use that stripes on the pattern paper as my inspiration. And I'm going to use 3 different paintbrushes once I flip the paper over, because there was ink splatters on it from spurting out that pink, and I'm just going to make some lines. Now you can see on the pattern paper that it is like they've just used a paintbrush. It's all thick and thin and all different jagged edges, so it's like they use watercolor. So I'm just recreating it as best as I can with the texture paste. It is a bit thinner than the texture paste because of the color that's been added to it, but it's still easy to go on with the brush, and it just gives that little bit of chunk and texture to it as well. So it's just a little bit different rather than if I just use the colours straight. You definitely could use them, but I just prefer this way. It looked really nice. It was really fun. So you can see, no rhyme or reason to the colours, just having a little play. I changed paintbrush because that one's really thick. Instead, pulled out a thinner one like the other two that I was using. I'm just going to have a little play. Now, bear in mind that it's texture paste, so you do want to make sure your brush is washed properly afterwards. Otherwise, they're going to be ruined because it will harden up and then the bristles will just be wasted. It's just really fun. It's one of those backgrounds that there's no right or wrong, because you're doing little randomness to the stripes and the randomness to the colours, that you can just put it on and just the colours work so nicely that it just comes together. So just a few more stripes. I really love this layout. It was really hard. Every month I make quite a few layouts, and when I look at them, I'm like, oh, that one was, that's the favourite. Or when I'm doing a voiceover, I'm like, oh yeah, I really like the way this turned out, or I really like this part of the layout. And it's just hard. There's obviously layouts that I'm like, that just came together and it's a moment documented, but it's not one of my favourite designs. But it's really fun to be able to use a kit in its entirety and kill it, but also then be happy with the way it all looks and the way it turns out. So on it goes, just finishing off to make sure I've layered enough and going to do it that way. Now putting them in my paint wash water, and I put it to the side because I wanted to go and wash them properly after I finished creating. And I got out this big stencil because you can see I've got lots of texture paste left, and I just wanted to have fun with it. So I'm going to do blend it all in. So I'm going to do the darker pink up the top here, and then I'm going to blend it into the lighter pink, and then blend it into the orange. But then what I'll do with the orange is bring some of that orange up the top as well, so that it's not just in the corner, just looking a bit random. So down it goes, just making sure I cover the whole stencil before I start blending it in a bit more. It's just really fun. They go together, these three colours, so nicely. Two of them are the same colour really, just different tones, aren't they? And that's really fun. So make sure you clean it all up. Just a baby wipe, doesn't take much. And on it goes. So I'm just having a little see to work out which way I wanted the cards. I do want them to go this way, even though I like them when they were horizontal that way as well. No, vertical. So either way would have worked. I do think I might have to recreate this layout with the background again, just like the way it just works so well. Get some, 3 little cards like this and copy the background, the pattern. Anyway, so I glued down my photo because I know that's going to sit there in the middle. And now I just pulled out all the embellishments to have a little play. So I'm just going to work out where I want to layer things, pull out some photos. I'm going with the pink and the yellow, orangey colour. I'm not going to add in any other colours. I lie. I'm going to add in some little bit of green in the leaves, but that's the only bit. I'm not going to go, okay, well, there's green in the leaves now. I'm going to add a green word because I don't want it to overwhelm with the colours. I still want the colours to be that focal point. So this tag is just perfect for this layout. So I'm going to nestle that in as the big part of the cluster on that left card. Now, I've got the cards here and the page is drying to my left. No, sorry, to my right. Not that it really matters, I guess. But while it's drying, I just make these 3 clusters. So that's a vellum heart that I printed, and I've got the one with cardstock, printed on cardstock that I cut out, and I figure it might be nice to use. And then this is an acetate piece of a scalloped circle. So I'm going to cut that out, and that's going to be the main background piece of the cluster on the right card. So that's just fun. You can see it's not that hard to cut. And if you haven't heard before, what I like to do is add a little bit of border to most things. Some things I don't, but most things I just add a little bit of like 1/2 centimetre maybe. I might even, something like that. Just a tiny little border, because then you're not cutting on the colour so that it looks like it's wonky, especially on a circle. And really, if you have it with a little bit of a white border, it also pops off its layering piece behind. So I added in these photos here, and it's looking pretty good. There's a tag printed on the vellum, and then a fake washi strip printed on the vellum. Just going to cut them out. I think it'd be nice to have some layering pieces behind the clusters as well, just to add a little pop of something interesting, and so that they're not just the normal square, or rectangleness of the cards. Now I love these rainbows, and I pretty much used most of them, so I need to print some more rainbows, I think. I thought I printed a fair bit. Unless they're hiding, I didn't. So just make washi strip that printed on the cardstock. Just going to layer it under that word there. And just keep that one there in case I want to add it somewhere else as a layering piece. And then I thought this pink here from the printable card was a little bit of offcut from a previous layout, so that's going to go nicely there. And trying to work out these extra pieces under here or not. Instead, I'm just going to put them away and maybe I'll use them later. But you can see, just simplifying it down to this kind of grid look with just the 3 squares or 3 cards as the main base for the clusters, and then minimizing it to the 2 colors means that you don't need to think too much. You just look at the style of what it is and how it could fit in and go with it that way. So I'm going to pull out one of these rainbows. So that's the only other spot where it has a bit different color. No, sorry, I'm wrong. I thought that at the beginning, but what I do is then cut out the middle colors so that it only remains the pink and yellow. See? Very clever, I thought. Sometimes I just have those moments where I'm like, oh, mind blowing. Even, I astound myself with the ideas. So that just worked really well. Just going to add 2. Just going to find a spot for them. And remembering, I haven't glued anything down, so it's just, a guide at the moment. And I did keep in both this part where I make the clusters and then the second part where I glue them down, because they do change a little bit as I'm gluing them down. And you can see how I use some foam tape and whatnot as they're gluing down as well. I didn't want, sometimes it's really good to see that process. Just having a little play to make sure if there's any other word embellishments that I wanted. I pulled out these 2 that are from the Pink Fresh collection. They're just the perfect colours, and they had some good sentiments. Sentiments on it. Sentiments? Yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm not talking about rocks. Hopefully I said that word right. Oh my gosh, I've said it too many times now that I'm not sure. So I'm going to cut out this big circle cluster. I probably could have pulled out my circle punch, but you can see, because I've cut that little bit of extra edge, it doesn't cut into the printing, so therefore the shape is intact, and you can't tell how bad my cutting is because the border is just the border. It just doesn't, your eye doesn't pick it up. So working on my clusters here, I've gotten to the stage where I think I can work on gluing them down and finalizing things. I'm just going to make sure by cutting out just this last tab, I think. Sorry, it's just out of screen. Yeah, last tab. I'm going to put it in there, and then I'm going to glue them down. So stapling down the acetate piece, just make sure it stays where it is. Could have done with wet glue, but it will take a bit to dry. So instead, I'm going to just use the wet glue for the other pieces and some foam tape behind this circle one, just to lift it up off the page. It's always fun to have a play with whether it's stuck flat to the ground or up, and what part of the cluster is up and down and overhanging and nestled in and tucked in and stuff like this. So just a really nice little pop of yellow with those flowers there. And you see it doesn't take long for the glue to stick the cardstock down. Just making sure, I'm just going to use double-sided tape to stick down this piece of pattern paper in the background and cut off the top. There's a little bit hanging out from the acetate piece, and that's just not where it needs to be. So that cluster is looking pretty good. I'm going to move along to the next one, starting with the washi tape and then the flowers. So just layering up the embellishment parts so that you get it all nestled in together and it works, so that nothing's floating or disjointed. There we go with the words. So this one doesn't have anything with foam tape because it's got the photo on there. We want that photo to pop with a bit of cuteness to it. Add on that tab on the back there, but I just wasn't liking it, so instead it comes off. Leave it to the side because it still has some double-sided tape on it, just in case I want to put it somewhere else. And originally that rainbow was going to go on the photo cluster, but going to move here to the right, and it's just going to make that cluster go from pretty much from the top to the bottom of that card on that right there. was missing something, but I just couldn't work out what it needed. So I auditioned a few pieces and then decide to move to this layout or this card and start with that, because I know that part of it's going to work, and I know that, you know, I could come back or I could pick up a piece and go, oh yeah, let's try it over here, and then it'll just eventually work. So I'm going to lay those couple of pieces there, just playing around the double-sided tape to get it all on. I did add a hole to this tag, but I don't add any string or twine to it, which is a little unusual, but it just didn't need it. I think if I'd put in string or ribbon or anything to it, it would have just added too much height vertically to the cards, and it just wasn't happening for the others, so it just didn't need to happen. Add the photos here. I stapled down that circle embellishment because it was vellum. It's just a little bit easier to do that, and then it doesn't, if you use wet glue with vellum or tracing paper, it does warp it, just crinkles it up immensely, so there's no need. Oh, excuse me, just yawned. It's been a long weekend. So on with some of these word stickers. The colours are perfect. Surprise, surprise, they are part of the collection. So who's loving their March kits so far? How much have you gotten done, and are you enjoying it? Next weekend is, next weekend from the weekend I'm making these voiceovers, the second weekend of March, because today is the end of February, so tomorrow will be the 1st of March. So technically I guess this weekend would be the first weekend of March. But next weekend it's Canberra Day, so it's a long weekend. And hopefully I get some more scrapping done. Hopefully, because that means I'll be using my stash, because I've nearly finished my March kits. So then I could finish them off, film a killer kit video and move on. So just going to add some of these enamel hearts, just working out where I wanted it. Tried that one on top of that white heart instead, moved it and put a different colour to overhang. Just adding them here, there and everywhere, just like little enamel dots. Just a nice little finishing touch. So they're looking pretty good. I'm liking the way they're all layering up. Going to add this vellum piece here, that tab, and then I bring them back to the layout. So the background has dried. I'm just having a little play to see if there was any different type of layout that those cards could work, but I do end up liking them all in a row, even if they didn't particularly become straight, because what happens is I glue them down with fun foam behind them, 2 layers of fun foam, and it all moved a little as it dried. So that tab was sticking out and wasn't allowing them to be close enough to each other, so I take it off. To try a few places to get it back on there, but that's okay. And wondered if I wanted a strip of rainbows, like a strip of washi. Instead, I don't want to add anything really crazy to this layout. It's got so much going on the cards that it's not overwhelming, but I don't want to take away from it because it looks really cool. It's going to use phone tape twice just so that I can get some good height, and I just use wet glue because it's mixed media behind, but because it's wet glue it does move around a little, and then because it's double layered of fun foam it moves around as well, so it's a little bit crazy how it all works. I tried to use my really useful box to glue it, hold it still. Instead what happens is it reminded me of these little resin flowers, and instead I pull them out and use a cluster of 3 of them on the layout. Meant that for some reason that little vellum was curling up a little, which is weird because there's no glue near it, on it. Might have been when I flipped it over. Instead I'm going to use these resin flowers as a nice addition to a cluster, but also to hold down that corner of that vellum circle heart. Wondered if the tassel would be a good addition here, but instead I decided against it and tried this lace. So here's where I try and readjust that because it just wasn't sitting properly, because I moved it up the fun foam moved, and there was one layer shorter than the other, and I could see it overhanging, and obviously I used blue foam and it just wasn't something I wanted to be able to see. So I try to work out how I'm going to use the lace, and I decided I'm going to cut it and have it under each card, because each card is its own part of the layout, and wanted to make sure that it added some nice texture to each cluster. So it looks really lovely layered under there. It was a really cool addition to our kits. It's always good to get texture things like that. And it's just a little bit short to use 3, but I actually like the fact that the 2 end ones have double layer of lace, and the middle one, which has the photo, only has the 1 layer of lace. Just looks really nice, nicely balanced, I think. So I'm just using wet glue again to glue them down. That way I can move them as they're going, and I just didn't think double-sided tape would hold it, because obviously it's lace. So the top layer, the top piece of lace on those double lace sections is up on the fun foam. Just using my spatula to glue it down, and making sure I did knock off my resin flowers a little, so I put them back. It's pretty easy once you get it in position, just push it down and make sure that the glue is adhering to the page. And I don't think I would have thought to put the lace there if it wasn't in my kit. The good thing about Steph making these kits for us is that she puts all this goodness together and then thinks about these little things like the lace or the resin flowers and whatnot. They're things I have in my stash, but I don't often pull them out unless they're right in front of my face. So here's the close-ups. Hopefully you've enjoyed this layout and it's inspired you to get out and create. Have a good day, guys. Bye.